Alright guys, last day of speeches. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
Imagine being able to alter organisms and life as we knew it. You wanted blue roses instead of red? Bam, blue roses in a single touch. Although being able to alter things with a flick of the wrist is as real as magic itself, scientists have been able to come close to something similar to this, namely in the form of genetic modification. Next slide. Now, genetic modification isn't nothing of a new topic. Selecting traits in wolves that make them more friendly or selecting traits in plants that make them yield more has been dated back to the early rise of domestications in human history. Today, however, we have taken genetic modification to a whole nother level to the point where the question, is it good, arises. To that I say, yes, we should continue pursuing genetic modification. Next slide, please. Let's be honest, dogs haven't been cuter and food hasn't tasted better without genetic modification. We are constantly interacting and consuming things that have at one point been genetically modified. With this in mind, then what exactly makes genetic modification so bad? I invite all of you to listen as I explore three areas. Next slide. As I explore three areas that genetic modification would benefit. The first being agriculture, the second being the environment, and then the third being human. Next slide. We begin with the first idea that comes to mind when it comes to genetic modification, that being plants. Unlike the other categories today, plants have become the backbone of genetic modification, and as you can see on this chart, these are the top 10 most genetically modified foods currently on the market. Next slide. A common argument against genetically modified plants is that they don't yield more, which, as it turns out, is actually true. However, the reason for that this is true is because the original article actually failed to admit a key reason as to why that's true. The reason, according to Daniel Nero, being that genetically modified plants that are made to be pest resistant, not to produce more. As a matter of fact, crops that yield more are actually haven't been commercialized yet. The benefit here is that with genetically modified plants, they have more consistent yields, not more yields, and this is what makes them different from, say, organic, where their yields tend to be a lot more inconsistent because they're easier targets for things like bacteria and pests to go after. This is also the reason why organic tends to be more expensive. The next category for plants is nutrition, where plants can be genetically modified to have greater nutritional values. Now, the best example that we currently have of this is something called golden rice. So a little background on rice is that rice, despite being a very common food amongst all around the world, it actually contains very little essential nutrients and often leads to malnutrition. Malnutrition is common in places like Africa and Asia, where low-income people tend to rely on single food sources like rice. This is where golden rice comes in. Golden rice is a type of rice that has been modified to help with vitamin A deficiency, which tends to cause blindness, and according to Dr. Aker, it affects around 250 to 500,000 children annually and is common in places like Africa and Asia. A crop like golden rice helps overcome problems of vitamin A deficiency by at least 50% with modern expense. Despite being a crop that has this benefits, it actually has been gone under fire. It has received some backlash by anti-GMO groups and organic activists because it's being GMO'd. Although it's still early in testing, they have caused a lot of defunding for this type of rice. Next slide. Now we move on to how GMOs can help our environment. For the sake of simplicity, I will be focusing on soil health as it is the main driver for all life on Earth. One of the essential players when it comes to GMOs is that it can help one of the biggest players when it comes to how GMOs can help our environment is by genetically modifying plants, as they are the closest source to the Earth. By using them as a catalyst, it allows for better prevention of soil erosion caused by mechanical weeding, and by modifying soil enzymes to make them healthier to retain more nitrogen. So next slide. Mechanical weeding is on the top of the list for soil erosion. It's a common practice that is used to get rid of weeds on farms. However, this process is very laborious, time-consuming, and not very effective at controlling weeds. It also causes erosion affecting soil biodiversity and allows greenhouse gases like methane to be released to escape from the soil. This concern has led scientists to develop crops that don't need tilting. These crops have become known as herbicide-tolerant crops, or HT crops for short. HT crops tolerate exposure to broad-spectrum herbicides like glyphosates and glyphosate, something along those lines. I have no idea how to pronounce it. When HT crops are exposed to these herbicides, they don't die unlike the weeds surrounding them, and thus it promotes no non-mechanical weeding. As the weeds die, they also work as a blanket that protects the soil from things like runoff and erosion, and with less tilting, this would mean much more water retention in the soil and less greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. When it comes to soil enzymes like bacteria, genetically modifying them creates soils with larger capacities for the elements nitrogen. A common environmental problem is nitrogen deprivation in soil. We have all experiences in the form of like those dead patches of grass that you usually see around corners. There's actually one right in front of Booth Library, right here. The reason why this happens is that when you walk over grass, your weight compresses on the soil, and as more and more people walk on it and the more and more it's compressed, you're basically suffocating the soil because you're pushing the air out of it. This ends up causing the bacteria in the soil to suffocate and die, thus leading to, dead plants. These bacteria are very important because these bacteria actually help plants absorb nitrogen, which plants themselves cannot absorb from the atmosphere. Currently, they actually did make a plant that has a DNA strain from one of these bacteria, and what's interesting about this is that when the plant itself needs nitrogen, it forces the bacteria in the soil to essentially give it more and suck up more. So, this plant was studied at the University of New York, and so far it has seen a very positive result with nitrogen activity within soil. Next slide. So by this point, we have covered food and our environment. Now let's talk about us. We can change our environment, we can change our food. Now how can we change us? Human modification has been the final frontier of genetic modification, and despite many people considering it as an act against nature, human genetic modification is and will be the future of what we now know as human. By genetically modifying humans, we can get rid of things like genetic diseases and the worst fate that a human can experience, aging. Next slide. Many deadly and difficult diseases have resisted destruction. A number of genetic mutations that humans suffer will only end after we actively intervene and genetically alter the next generation of humans. For example, we have cancer therapeutics. New immunotherapies can be delivered using gene editing. By modifying T cells or your immune system cells, they can be used to help locate and kill cancer cells. We also have better drug delivery processes where genetic makeup can actually help speed up the consumption and absorption of drugs. CRISPR is currently being used for this. And then we also have inherited diseases, so the ones that your parents pass on to you. With genetic editing, we can get rid of diseases like cystic fibrosis before they even have the chance to emerge. Genetic editing can also help expand the human lifespan. Because of aging, this causes other health problems that for many people are irreversible and tend to kill at a very early age. With gene editing, we can reverse the most basic processes for the body's decline. This has already been achieved on mice. With gene editing, we can have humans live twice as long and perhaps hundreds of years without the risk of memory loss, loss of bone mass, etc. In summary, it's easy to see how genetic modification has many benefits. It allows for more consistent yields in plants and helps create foods with higher nutritional values. It helps with the environment by boosting soil health by modifying plants and bacteria. And finally, by modifying humans, we can have stronger immune systems and live longer. So there you have it, the benefits of, next slide, the benefits of genetic modification. Despite what the opposition says, remember, it was through genetic modification that allowed us to eat better and have cuter pets in the process. Thank you.